Hey, learn audio engineering. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of interviewing Ryan Morse from Axis Analog as part of a follow-up to our NAMM visit. If you're not already familiar with their service, Axis Analog allows users to access robotically controlled analog equipment through the cloud. For private studios, this means that they're able to automate their equipment and stay in the sweet spot. And for consumers, this means that we can get our hands on the real deal analog equipment. If you'd like to try out some analog equipment today, check the description below for a link, and you can use the coupon code FIXYOURSNARE for 30% off your first 1 hour rental. Come on, you know it could use some work. I know they just added some new Vari Mu compressors that are very, very tasty, so definitely check it out. And they're also expanding into plate reverbs and other guitar pedals to give you more options to shape your tone. All right, let's check in with Ryan and see what he has to say.
Yo ho ho.
Mr. Ryan, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, yeah. It's good to see you again. Good to have you on. I'm prepared as well.
Yes.
So yeah, the goal here, I love the concept of what you guys are going for, and I want to learn more about it, kind of how it came to fruition and where it's going next.
Cool.
So the first question I have, like robotics, who developed that? Was that Chris, the founder, or did you guys hire someone to do that?
Yeah, so our founder, Chris, everybody always asks, like, where did he get the idea? And everyone thinks he was on drugs or something like that. It was actually much more innocent. He had been recording it with his own band, and they were mixing their record, and it just kind of suddenly occurred to him that there's probably hardware sitting there unused all over the place. It's kind of more of he kind of came at it more from an Uber type mentality, where it's like, well, if someone's not using it, then maybe we could share it in the cloud.
Yeah.
Usually the people think, oh, he just wanted to fix the recall problem, but that wasn't even really where he was coming from.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then you have the plug-in matrix. Like you guys developed a plug-in to control all of these robotics. Was that also him? And which came first? I guess they would have happened at the same time, or?
Yeah, the robotics actually came first, and it's really funny. Most people get kind of obsessed with the robotics and assume that that's the hardest part. It's not at all. Chris's background is as a software engineer.
Oh, okay.
And it's the software programming that's been the biggest challenge, because managing the stream going out and back constantly and coordinating that with the robotics. The robotics are sort of elementary, to be honest with you, in terms of there's nothing particularly advanced about the robotics. But when you mix in the plug-in interface and managing the streaming and the buffering and routing devices, that's where the complex interfacing happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, what's next with this idea? We talked a little bit about this at NAMM, but I want to hear your words about the private installations and everything like that you're seeking out.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So at NAMM, we have begun offering, kind of what I just mentioned before, where there's so much equipment out there that we can go to a studio, we can install the robotics on that equipment, put a server computer there. The person can choose to just use it locally, just like they normally would, but they have robotic control. And then if they want to add an additional revenue stream, I see you frozen. Are we good? Okay.
Yeah, we're good. I can hear you.
So you're taking, maybe when you go to bed at night and you turn the lights off at the studio, you leave your equipment on and you make it available for anyone to use.
Absolutely. And I guess that connects like the two ends of it. You've got the people that have had this equipment for a long time. They're used to the sound of it, but maybe to some extent, maybe they don't want to get up out of the sweet spot to really adjust all of that, right? I love that, by the way, that it's like a plug-in. You can stay in your speakers and you can use it. But it also connects it to the people that, don't have access to that equipment, right? They can use the real deal. So I think it kind of merges those two worlds pretty well.
Yeah, and it offers some compelling new opportunities. I mean, some people have one-of-a-kind vintage pieces of gear. Some people have stuff that's been modified in a really unique way. And we're also encouraging the studio owners, because the way our plugin works, when you open the plugin, you'll see a drop-down menu where you can choose to access different studios around the world.
Right.
So we've been encouraging those studios that we've been talking to, why are they going to choose your studio? What do you have? So maybe some people will build prefixed chains, like, hey, here's a great drum processing chain, or here's a great vocal processing chain. So you'll be able to be like, oh, okay, I want to hit, famous producer A. I want to go to his studio, connect in the cloud, and use his vocal chain.
So I guess that brings me to my next question. What is your dream piece of gear? What is the best acquisition you guys think you could get that you'd
That's
long
a
for?
that's a fascinating question. I think that I'm supposed to be agnostic in terms of, loving all gear equally, but I'm really proud to add the BG2, which is a mono Vari Mu compressor
Right.
from
I was looking at that one. Yeah.
yeah, Highland Dynamics. Bryce Gonzalez, that's the BG2 stands for. He just has an incredible ear for making musical sounding equipment. I think a lot of manufacturers can get hung up on noise floor and technical specs and features and da da da, whereas Bryce tends to just go straight for like what's going to sound really good.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we have a pair of those, and they're mono, but you can link the controls with the robotics, right? So you can use them in stereo quite easily. But in terms of the ultimate piece of gear, um, I personally want our rack in the cloud to be a place where engineers can use different equipment from different manufacturers, easily compare stuff, easily try new signal chains. It's a great place to try before you buy.
Yeah.
It's a great place to really experiment and create original sound because if 10 of us all use the same plugins, they all behave exactly the same, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You can kind of create your secret sauce connecting
Yeah.
to different analog gear. And I'll tell you a secret, we've been challenging the manufacturers, different gear designers. We've been saying, hey, if you could make a one of a kind piece of gear that just lives in the cloud, what would you
Yeah.
build?
Right.
You could
Okay.
have as many tubes in it as you want. You could
Yeah.
have 10 transformers. What do you want to do?
It doesn't
So
have to be practical and portable. It could,
yeah,
people can share it, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to ship. It doesn't even have to fit in a 19-inch rack if you don't want it to. So
Right.
we've had a few of them take the bait, and there's some interesting thoughts out there going on. So eventually, look forward to a one-of-a-kind piece of gear, which leads me to my last piece, which is the Chuddy comp by
Right. Yeah.
a manufacturer in Brazil named Licel. We're going to have one of those in the cloud as well, and that's kind of a boutique, hard to find, very Mu compressor.
Okay. Right on. So you guys are building a lot of buzz around the brand, and you met some big names at NAMM. I think you mentioned you met like CLA, TLA, Sylvia Massey, Warren Hewitt. And you mentioned that when CLA saw it and he called in Michael Brower and he was just like, you guys were pitching ideas. What did they think of it? And did they have any ideas that inspired you, or did you make any deals with them?
No deals. I mean, Chris Lord Alge was incredible. I kind of grabbed him as he was walking by,
Yeah.
and he took one look at the robotics, and it took him less than a minute, and he didn't stop talking for 10 minutes. He had a bunch of ideas, and his brother Tom was the same way, and Brower when he came by. I mean, really, those guys all kind of go to selfish solutions for themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
They want recall in their own studios. But Chris was immediately like, but also, people would pay a lot of money to use my gear in the cloud. So
Of course he would. I think that would be funny because you could try like his signature 1176 versus like the plugin that he puts out that he endorses a lot, right? See if there's any difference there. So that's, yeah, it sounds like you guys got a lot of really good things going for you. I originally had an idea of a similar thing and it went in a different direction, and I'll pitch this to you. It was faceplates of analog gear. So you have the faceplate of what like an 1176 would look like, and it would control a digital plugin emulation, allowing users to have hands-on control of a plugin. So it's like an analog emulated plugin that they could have a faceplate for. And it's interesting that it's a similar thing, but you guys have gone in a different direction of digitally controlling the analog version of that.
yeah, it's funny because we already are in talks of doing something like this for a mastering engineer. I can't I can't tell you whom, but essentially his idea was, I'll put all my gear in a different room, but I'm just going to have like faceplates for the actual equipment next to me, and you can send the control data through those blank. They're faceplates, but there's nothing behind them, kind of like in those Hollywood sets where it's a flat building front, nothing behind it.
The fake
So it's
Marshall
a little
cabs
bit
or
like
something.
your idea where he would have the actual faceplates would be turning actual knobs, and then the control data on the back would just be sent to the real equipment,
Yeah.
which could be one room over or across the country.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a wild world we're living in. Do you see
Yeah, but
any other? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say when you asked about the future, and I think something that comes up a lot that we're looking into very seriously is plate reverbs and chambers,
Yes.
putting them in the cloud, because like the studio I work at, Rarefied Recording in San Diego, He bought a plate reverb about a year ago, and for me, it was the first time I'd ever used a real plate. I mean, most of us kind of come up in the plug-in era, right?
Yeah.
And it was definitely one of those things where when you hear the real thing, you go, "Whoa, that's a lot different than the plug-in."
Absolutely. That'd be really exciting. So you've talked about, I think you mentioned plates, guitar pedals. Like you could get like your hands on a Klon pedal or something like that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, picture opening up our plugin, and there's 32 different guitar pedals that you could reserve and swap the order and build a chain, use it
yeah.
as a creative effect. I just had another Grammy-winning engineer on the phone yesterday who was sharing with us how much he uses guitar pedals in his mixing process.
Yeah.
So if you've ever been in a studio, for those of you guys that don't know how that really works, usually you have to have a reamping pedal, you have a bunch of routing challenges, and for me, out of sheer laziness, I often don't use a guitar pedal in
Yeah.
mixing. But if I had a plug-in that I could have full recall that had a bunch of things and so we'd like to go there, but it's part of our situation as a company is we need the market to steer us. So for you guys that are watching, let us know what kind of gear you want to see in the cloud. Um, we don't need to tell everybody else, right? We can just let you guys tell us what you want to see, and we'll do it.
Absolutely. There you go. And I see you have like a huge presence on social media. You're always on Instagram. You're always answering people. And that was the first thing when I first reached out to you. In like 10 minutes, you're just boom, you're right there. So you can really tell that you guys are listening to your audience and seeing what they want and what's going to help you guys grow and help them get the sounds that they want.
Thanks. Yeah, it's important to us. We're both music lovers and passionate about music production ourselves, and there's a component in this for us. We're doing it for the love, and so we like to share our passion, and we like to hear what people are using it for. It's pretty exciting. Like a lot of people that have never even had a chance to use this equipment are getting to use it and talk to us about it. So there's a really fun component to this where it's something we can all share, right? Like if you and I are talking about a G compressor, suddenly we can both connect to one and share our experience around it.
That's really exciting. Okay, I have one last thing that I'll ask you about. This is music related, not quite recording related, but I'll do a little segue. So, your company allows users to gain access to this fantastic equipment. It allows them to capture, that sound that was on a hit record and lets them learn about the tools that control and affect the dynamics of the delivery of a sound or like a section of music, right? One of the videos that I did was on #1 hit songs and kind of the similarities that these ones have. And every time I talk about popular music, people kind of like hate on it and they say, oh, it's not like the music that it was. It's not like the Beatles. Right? That's the one that I always get. So I'm doing a project now where I'm comparing all the Beatles #1s against all of the Max Martin #1s, like the kind of everyday pop songs that we get now. And the first thing that I've noticed in this kind of round is all of the modern pop songs are about a minute on average longer. Where would you think all that extra time goes, if you had to guess?
So the modern pop songs, make sure I understand the question, are about a minute longer than the average Beatles song.
Yeah, than the old kind of 60s style of arrangement. So where do you think all the extra time comes in?
So yeah, I'll back into that answer and I'll say that so the medium has always shaped music, right? And so albums were as long as they were because that's how much you could fit onto a record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Radio stations wanted lead-in time, right? So they could do the call sign and everything. And then now in streaming, you don't get paid until 30 seconds in.
Is that right?
So the songwriting's starting to change to accommodate streaming. And also another thing that you may not know is that if someone skips your song with more than 30 seconds left in the song, the algorithm's going to view that as that they were kind of lukewarm. They didn't really like the song. So you can't drag on that ending too long because if they skip it outside of 30 seconds from the end, you're getting penalized. So if I had to guess in the Max Martin era, he was CDs and radios, and I would say I'm going to say that extra time went into a lengthier bridge. I don't know.
That's a good answer. My hypothesis is that it was the chorus, because the Beatles songs, it's kind of hard to tell what is the chorus. Usually I just think of it as like the most catchiest part of the main section.
Right.
But with the Max Martin stuff, the chorus takes up at least 50% of the song.
Interesting.
And it is really interesting. There was an NSYNC song, and it was like 61% chorus. and there's Beatles songs, like it's kind of subjective, but anywhere from like 20%. There was one that was like 70%. But there's a lot more diversity there, whereas like the modern stuff is like over half chorus.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Because Drake just had an album that beat the Beatles sales records, right? And so
Yeah,
my
yeah.
question would be, let's compare over the eras. So you have the Beatles hits, you've got Max Martin's hits, and then you have Drake's hits. And let's take the fact that the Beatles hits, often those songs are 50 years old. So 50 years from
Yeah.
now, if someone hears a Max Martin hit, someone hears a Beatle hit, and they hear a Drake hit, are they even going to be able to relate to and understand all three of those? Which of those three do you think would be as relatable, in 50 years as it is now versus maybe hard to kind of understand?
Which one
Yeah,
would be
like,
more
if you heard a
relatable?
Beatles song, if you heard Eleanor Rigby in 50 years, is that going to sound like, what is this guy talking about? Or if you heard one of Drake's songs, or if you heard one of Max Martin's hits?
I think in terms of like instrumentation, I think the Beatles one might be less relatable because like especially in the Drake stuff, like most of that is
Right,
software instruments, right? So
right,
I'm thinking that those are sounds or textures or like an aesthetic that's more familiar now. So I think like the Max Martin stuff will probably be viewed as relatable, but I could see where you're going that, after a while, what was interesting is like when I looked into the Max Martin songs, like he's still using guitar in a lot of the music. Like there's
right,
still like guitar riffs and there's like noticeable piano things. The Drake stuff definitely seems like all digital besides the voice. Like they use the
right,
voice in a lot of creative ways and hip
right.
hop does that really well.
Like if someone's going to do an
Yeah.
acoustic version of a Drake song, like what are they going to play?
Yeah. I think that'd be really interesting. Like there are acoustic versions of that, and they're like
Right.
super stripped down or something. But that's a really interesting concept. That might have to be a third part to this series, is comparing
Cool.
Drake to all these other ones. No, thank you again, Ryan. It was great to talk to you again, and
Awesome. Great talking to you.
I wish you all the best.
Good luck to all the Learn Audio Engineering followers and fans.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.
If you liked this video, click here to see a tour and interview of the Sennheiser factory in Germany, or you can click this video, which the algorithm has determined that you will enjoy. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel so that you get notified every time a new video comes out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.